Okay, so I just watched Zodiac, and I think I'm kind of disappointed with it. I'm gonna have to talk through this because I think it mostly comes from the fact that I couldn't really help but compare it to Fight Club. And Fight Club is just like so well done that I feel like I was expecting Zodiac to be along the same lines, I guess, in terms of like how smart it is. Because Fight Club is just so like genius in its execution, and it's got all these twists and turns that you don't expect, which Zodiac has that to a certain extent, but the fact that it's grounded in reality makes it a lot harder for the movie to be like super interesting, I guess, in a certain way. I mean, I was really acutely disappointed by the fact that they didn't solve the case, I was almost done with the movie, and then I realized that I'd heard somewhere, oh wait, they don't actually solve this case, it's an open case, and I was like super bummed. Because the whole time I was watching it like, oh man, I can't wait to see how this all pans out, I can't wait to see how this all fits together. And to a certain extent you get that, like a little bit, which is nice, because otherwise it would have been like really lame. Like if it was just like a jumble of evidence and you don't get any closure, that would be stupid. Obviously David Fincher is smarter than that. And so he put it together in such a way that it's super interesting. You're hooked the entire time. You're really invested in the case in the same way that the main character is, Robert. And so, like, yeah, that obviously is a huge plus, but I can't help but be disappointed by the fact that they didn't solve it, because it's like all of that work is just like, I don't know, it's not very satisfying. But at the same time, like, it's more chilling in a sense. Just the fact that it was based on real case files and all this stuff makes it super interesting at the same time. On the subject of Robert as Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he plays an audience surrogate in a way that's really, really good. Because he's your normal everyday guy, just like us, and he's just finding this stuff out, you know, piece by piece, and you can just see it on his face, you know? Like, he is just feeling every twist and turn of that case. He's discovering things as he goes in the same way that we are, and so I thought he did a really good job of playing our emotions on the screen. The way that the audience is reacting to all this information is the same way that he's reacting to this information. And so that was really well played on his part. It's funny because the movie has such a similar vibe to Prisoners, where Jake Gyllenhaal is the detective guy who's a lot more like on top of his game, like has never not solved a case kind of thing. And so like I saw Jake Gyllenhaal on the cover and I see him like at the beginning of the movie, and I'm just expecting him to be that kind of same character just because of Prisoners. But he's like totally the opposite. Like he's just the random cartoonist guy that doesn't have any experience in crime or law enforcement or anything, which was funny. I mean, hey, that's his range as an actor. He can play both sides, huh? But yeah, no, he did a phenomenal job as always. Yeah, I was surprised by how many different characters were brought together throughout the course of the film, because again, I was expecting it to be focused on like one main guy and his pursuit of the case, but it was more like it kind of went through like these different separate storylines, because you had Robert Downey Jr.'s character of Paul Avery going on his own, you know, sort of mission, and then you have Mark Ruffalo and the other guy who are like trying to investigate, who are actually the official guys trying to investigate the case, and then you have Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and they're all kind of like going on their own separate thread of evidence and clues, and you kind of get bogged down in the evidence along with them. Honestly, yeah, the more that I'm thinking about it, the more I'm realizing that like this film really shines in the fact that it puts you right there in the same situation as the characters. And so the entire time, you're not really getting a lot of extra information that they don't have. The only times that you get that are like at the beginning when you get to see when you see the Zodiac actually doing his crimes. Like there's a couple of those different scenes where you actually see it from the perspective of the victims, which isn't something that the police or the investigators would have seen. But pretty much, and I mean, in those scenes too, obviously, his face is shrouded, you never really get any information. Besides those scenes though, really, you are just in the moment with these people. You're in the moment with Robert Graysmith. You're in the moment with the investigators as they just try to sort through all of this. And on the note of the scenes where it showed the crimes, what was cool and like the thing that felt the most like Fincher-esque to me, I don't know, like I guess it just like it reminded me of Fight Club in a way. Just the way that like those scenes are done in such a way where it's like, this should be giving me more information than it does. Like, I'm getting a silhouette, I see an actor who is portraying the Zodiac Killer, but like there's just enough shadow or there's just enough whatever obscuring him, and you actually get nothing out of it. Like the scene where he's in the costume and he's like talking to the people on the picnic blanket, it's like, I should be getting a bunch out of this. Like, I'm literally seeing the Zodiac Killer that everyone's trying to find have a conversation with some people and then go and kill them. Like, this should be giving me like tip-offs as to who this guy is as the audience. Like, don't I get that special treatment because I'm, you know, the omniscient person watching from above? It's like, no, you actually get nothing out of that. Like, there is no information that those scenes actually give you, at least nothing obvious. I don't know, maybe if I watch it again, there'll be some like secret details hidden in there that make it obvious. But it's like, no, that's just, you just get that, but it's just beyond your reach, basically. And that's like, it's really maddening, but it's like, it's satisfying at the same time just because of how smart it is. It's like, yeah, you know, he's giving you these scenes of the crime, but he's really not giving you any information at all. So I thought that was really smart and cool, the way that was done. Another thing is just the way that tension is done in the film. I appreciated. I'd heard the film hyped up as being like super scary. I wasn't like, there wasn't really any moments that were like super tense or spooky, but I think that the way that Fincher conveyed the tension and the stress and the fear of his characters was really, really good. Because of course the entire movie is very tense, and there are moments of like, oh, okay, yeah, like there are moments of panic in there. So it's done really, really well as like a taut, tightly wound thriller. I guess I was expecting it to be like more gross or scary or spooky, just because of the subject matter. Like this serial killer kind of thing is usually the stuff of horror movies, whereas this was very much not that, and it dealt with it in like a cold, unfeeling manner, which actually elevated the tension to a certain extent, in that like you're literally just examining evidence the whole time. So since you're seeing it from the perspective of people who, by the nature of their jobs, are forced to look at things in an unfeeling and cold manner, the movie approaches it in that way, which is actually pretty cool, because then you avoid a lot of like unnecessary thrill factor, you know, slasher, you know, stupid horror stuff that would honestly like diminish the impact of the story as something that's real. So I think kind of what I'm trying to get at here is like, if it was approached in such a way of like a horror movie, like where you're taking a real life story, which I mean lots of horror movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Psycho, or, you know, Silence of the Lambs, like they all come from real life stories of serial killers. Those movies can be done in such a way that they become a slasher, which in the one sense is scary, but in another sense is actually kind of goofy, you know? Like the way that horror movies are conveyed is often like, it's over the top for the sake of giving you those jump scares and those thrills, but it's not realistic. So this story takes like the same sort of subject matter, but displays it in a way that's like really, really, you know, rapid fire, you know, cold and realistic, so that you're not getting any of this extra thrill factor thing that kind of takes away from the fact that it actually did happen and that these were actual people's lives that were lost. So that I appreciated. But then it also walks the line between those two things, because it still uses like intense music, and you have that scene where he's going through the basement that's just scary, and there's not really any reason why. I came away from that scene because I'd heard about the basement scene. I was like, oh man, like this is going to be the really intense scene. And after that I was like, what was the point, you know? Like, by the end of the movie, there wasn't really any, like, who was that guy? Like, what was the... Maybe I'm missing something? I don't know. Like, that scene came off as, like, okay, maybe this guy's tied to the Zodiac Killer, but I guess he's not really, because we come away thinking, you know, that it's the other guy. I don't know. That scene was still marvelously done in the way that it was just, like, I'm just scared of this basement, dude. Like, I have no idea what's down here. It doesn't end up being anything, but I am scared of the basement, dude. So, like, I thought that was pretty cool. And I mean, as I expected, David Fincher is a master of all of those technical things, like editing the film in a really, you know, snappy, really interesting way, using the soundtrack in such a way that was cool and interesting, and kept the movie kind of fun, even though it is such dark subject matter, which is cool. In the same way that like Fight Club takes like some really dark and gross subject matter, but like frames it in a comedic light, Zodiac did that too, and there was a lot of actually legitimately funny moments that kind of balanced out the darkness of the subject matter, which is just, yeah, that's just kind of how Fincher operates, at least what I know so far. I've only seen this in Fight Club. But from what I can tell, yeah, that's just kind of the way that he operates, is framing these things slightly comedically sometimes, or taking an angle that's a little more on the nose. Well, maybe not perhaps on the nose, but taking an angle that you wouldn't expect, / like looking at it from a little bit more of like a smart perspective. So instead of just like showing things the way that you'd expect it to be shown, he frames it in such a way that you start to draw your own conclusions. An example of that would be the scene when they're meeting with that guy Lee at whatever job he works. They're meeting him in that room, and it kind of just shows like subtle close-up shots of like the shoes that he's wearing and the watch that he's wearing, and it's like nothing is really said until like it's mentioned later, but it's like you make those own conclusions. You're like, wait a second, I'm drawing these conclusions myself. Going back to the audience surrogate thing, it's like we're experiencing this at the same time as the characters. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, so all in all, fantastic thriller, super tense, really well done, great acting. I'm excited to see more from David Fincher. I think that I was just disappointed by this because I'm comparing it to Fight Club, and Fight Club is just so elevated in terms of like, it's got so many things that you wouldn't expect. This movie is told in a more conventional manner. That's not a problem. It just makes it maybe not quite as artistic and, crazy as something like Fight Club. I think by the end of this little discussion, I'm going to go ahead and give it 4 out of 5 stars, which would be 8 out of 10 on IMDb, I think. So yeah, all in all, a really, really well done movie. And I don't know, maybe it'll get better on rewatch. Maybe it'll be worse on rewatch. Who knows? I'm going to leave and focus on driving now, so I will see you tomorrow.